Hello, welcome to Birmingham Property News Show, the show in Birmingham that deals with property. My name's Ewan Rankin. I'm a Birmingham-based photographer and videographer, and I'm here to kind of try and steer the ship as it goes. Oh, hang on. James is back. I've got some echo on his line. Joining me, James Forrester.
Hello, how are you doing today?
From the usual space where Krish goes.
Oh, I know. Christian sits out that way. I'm in my office today.
Oh, the private office today.
That's right. Got to get something in life.
How was the trip last week, mate? Because we missed you. You left me and Krish to it, and that was it.
Yeah, very successful trip up to Newcastle. Those who don't know, we develop properties as well under a different banner of Stripe Homes. We're building 126 apartments between studios and one bedrooms, right on the riverbank of the River Tyne in Newcastle. Lovely purpose-built student accommodation. So we officially we went on site, starting site clearance last Monday. So very exciting times.
Yeah, we showed a picture of it. It's a good-looking property.
It is. It's look, I'm really proud of it. Obviously, I'm from the northeast. I think the northeast's really starting to change. A lot of investments coming in now from London and overseas. Obviously, the breaking news is that it looks like the football club is potentially sold to one of the richest princes over in Abu Dhabi for a reported 350 million. Proof of funds have now been shown, and it's now at the Premier League to go through the relevant processes.
You'd have found that down the back of the sofa.
I think it'd be great for the city if it happens, though, because there'd be a lot of investment. All of a sudden, Newcastle is already on the world map. But I think when you get takeover bids like this, with the finances that this particular family have, you can see a lot of things change for the right. And don't forget, it's got a very young workforce up in Newcastle, very big on the digital, very big on engineering, very big on science. We've got a £300 million science park being built, and I'm not forgetting the medical. Newcastle is famous for training up, obviously, doctors of the future and consultants, etc. So, look, very excited, and hopefully we'll be securing sites 2 and 3 within the next few weeks.
Well, let's get straight into it then. First story straight up. We're building a lot of houses in the Jewellery Quarter, 57% above the post-millennium, or it rises to 57%, and it's well above the post-millennium average. Yeah,
so basically, I thought this was a really interesting one. So I've just put it on the Birmingham Property News website, so birminghampropertynews.co.uk. And what I thought was interesting is nationally, the number of new homes created in 2018 was just over 220,000. But that's the highest since 1989, which I thought was astonishing. But then since 2002, the average has only been about 146,000 a year. So it's a bit interesting because, when you see a lot of new homes, you see a lot of trains going up, it's great, a lot of infrastructure projects, but a lot of these new home sites going up around, you're thinking, are we building too many houses? Especially off the back of the 2018 build figures, are we going to keep up with the ever-growing population? And at the moment, the official reports state that the country actually needs 240,000 new homes built every year just to stand still.
Blimey.
So even last year, we were still 20,000 short. But obviously that was last year alone. If you think about it, for the last 14 odd years, we've been, building basically 100,000 properties needed. So we've got a massive backlog now.
Yeah, no. I mean, the thing is as well, the amount of properties that you're going to need for people is relatively predictable, isn't it?
Well, it is. Well, what the Chartered Institute of Housing is saying now is the national backlog of new homes is about 4.7 million. That's unbelievable. Basically what they're saying is just that, younger adults are living with parents now, shared housing, because of unaffordability. If we take Birmingham as a prime example here, property prices have risen so much, but wages haven't. So, obviously you do have that affordability factor that's going in, not just on purchasing, also on rentals. If you're going to be renting properties, make it realistic so tenants can obviously can afford to rent. People are not always looking for 2-bedroom apartments at £1,400 a month, for example, in the city centre.
So we've had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. These are built dwellings. They're not sold dwellings. So is there a gap between the built and the sold, or are they being eaten up?
I think it's been eaten up slightly, all together. I think you've got to look at it and break this down into different audiences, to be honest. If I just take Birmingham area, for example, last year in Birmingham, out that number, it was 3,160 new homes were created. In the Birmingham Council area, if you want to look at it that way. But interestingly, only 731 were council and housing association homes.
Mm.
I think the local authority is saying that they need an additional 500 homes on top of these figures a year. But if they could be built, how are they going to be paid for? This is what we have to be looking for. Then you've got infrastructure projects that are needed. It's great seeing house building go ahead. And obviously I'm in the property game, so it's fantastic. But then you have to start looking at the road infrastructure, schools. Is there going to be places for the children, hospital capacity, doctor surgeries? And this is all about the local authority and the local plans. Where these locations of properties are being built. But you've got to have the infrastructure that's going with it as well.
Yeah, I mean it's all very well having the grants to build these properties, but you need the land as well, and that's getting harder and harder to come by, isn't it?
It is definitely, yeah, and I think this is where, and I think, well, look, I'm a big believer as councils keep saying that they have no money. Everyone's council tax keeps going up, so I think councils do have plenty of money, but they just don't spend it wisely. And I think this is the difference of what we're starting to see now as well. If we're saying, let me give you some stats here. So, for example, obviously the Conservatives, they lifted the cap on what local authorities could borrow back in late 2018, meaning that, the councils basically could borrow money to build more houses. Very straightforward, you'd think. Okay, well, let's say those additional 500 homes a year for the next 5 years in Birmingham cost 375 million. That would produce a total, let's say, of about 17.4 million in rent. Well, current interest rates is 9.5 million. So that would leave a surplus of 7.9 million for property maintenance and management. Basically, what it means is, in a nutshell, the council's houses pay for themselves. So why are they not doing it?
Mm.
If they can go and get the funding and they can pay for themselves, then why not go and borrow the money and do this? And this is, and for some reason, you've got to look at what it's going to cost to do this over the time, how many houses that's going to be over total. And even though it's a great idea from the Conservatives, the matter of the fact is that central government doesn't have that kind of money for the councils to borrow. It's great, it makes headlines. But if you take that across, you can't just do it for Birmingham. You then have to put it across nationwide. And realistically, the figures are more likely to be about 10 to 15 billion. It's not going to happen. So, basically what it's saying is that long-term, the housing shortage is going to stay, the same. And it means house prices are going to remain strong. Yes, there'll be little blips with Brexit and things as well. But, in the nutshell, prices are going to increase. Not as rapidly, but they're still going to increase because it's supply and demand. It's basic mathematics.
So or property developers now, if they're private property developers, they've got. You're losing the upper impetus there for cheaper housing because of the fact they are dictating the price. But in order to get a land grant and in order to get planning permission, they are required to provide a proportion of affordable housing, aren't they? So that is that the mechanism of trying to taking up the council. House. Yeah,
well, it depends also, and it's a difficult one, obviously, because we're a developer ourselves, so I have to be quite careful on my words here. But it all comes down to the location. Councils need to be working with, architects and listening to developers and listening to the local community. If we take the city centre, which is where I'm currently sat at the moment, you go in for planning permission at the moment and you're being asked how many car parking spaces are being made available. But then on the flip side, they're about to say they're about to shut down Broad Street to have the tram built into it. So why do you need car parking space in a development where you're going to have the local tram and you're going to find it very difficult to get a car out from there? once that's established as well. So there's a bit of common sense has got to come into this. I think when you're in the more suburban areas, then absolutely, you should be having a bit more affordable housing or social housing coming into it. But then you've got a flip side of, private land and social housing trying to mix together. It doesn't always go down that well. And you just get that horrible circle of where things don't get authorised, numbers come down. And just a simple matter of fact is the more barriers that the councils put in to house building, or regardless if it's houses or apartments, etc., the worse this will actually get. And if we can't supply the right number of homes locally as well as nationally, what it means is that the prices are just going to remain strong, in the long term. And, if I'm sat for the jury quarter, for example, I'm being asked, I've just got a question pop through here, well, what does it basically mean for the landlords here in the jury quarter? Well, it basically just means that longer term, it's going to be beneficial for you because, the demand still outstrips the supply, and people are going to still, unfortunately, we're going to have the upward pressure on tenants to keep renting. So, if you can buy. It just means you're still going to do quite well, because as long as you're buying right and you're charging right, then you'll find that you're going to do well. Just be a responsible landlord. And I think they're the key things that we need to be looking at moving forward.
And if you're thinking of buy to let, then you're going to be a tenant and a landlord. And as of Saturday, I'm afraid your world is going to change rather rapidly in terms of costs that you can have. The tenant fees ban kicks in England, James.
It does, and you will be shocked. I've been office-based now for the last 2 days for various reasons, interviewing for staff, dealing with a lot of our landlords who have come in, landlords who are not, with ourselves and with other companies, private landlords, and they're coming in for advice at the moment. And I am shocked of how many agents, as well as landlords, are not aware about what is about to take place on the 1st of June. So this is an act. This is not something that is forced down. This is not something that we've all got together and said, "Oh, we'll put it in place." This is coming down from central government, and what it means is from the 1st of June 2019, so Saturday, you will no longer be able to charge fees for new tenancies signed on or after that date. I think this is great news. We've never charged tenant fees in the first place in regards to this, but we do know that a lot of people have done, and their business has been based upon this. And it's not just agents, this is landlords as well. So if they are privately renting, they will no longer be allowed to charge the fees anymore. And if so, and they keep applying to it on new tenancies, then there's big fines in place, and it's very easy to make the complaints.
Yeah, so we've got to point out this doesn't relate to existing agreements that you've currently got. You're not going to get a windfall of cash from getting your stuff back from that you originally paid for mistakenly. This is only for when you've got a renewal of tenancy or when you've got a new tenancy coming out, isn't it?
Correct, and that's something that it's a very fine line. That so new tenancies from Saturday onwards. So of course a lot of tenants are going to wait now for June 1st. From any sensible agent would have stopped if they were charging tenant fees. We should have stopped that already. To lead up to get used to this. Where the fine line is obviously the tenancies that are in place. So if once your renewal is coming up, then you can't charge, obviously, tenancy fees. Also, what applies in this Tenant Fee Act is the deposits. So the deposits can be paid in two ways. You can either do your traditional deposit, where you pay what has always been 6 weeks as a holding deposit to cover any damages, maintenance, etc. when you end your tenancy. That will all change as well on the 1st of June, and that will now come down to 5 weeks. Is all you would have to pay. Right. However, if you're doing a renewal on your tenancy, or you have a six-week deposit, then you will need to repay that 1 week back to your tenants.
Oh, blimey! So there's going to be a few people out of pocket then straight away.
Well, yeah, you'll still be able to pursue. Obviously, if there's damages, you'll still be able to pursue and everything in regards to that. But it's a lot of people are not aware of this. Altogether, that they will have to provide, that they will have to refund tenants some of their money back. Now, there is alternatives. We use, for example, within the company, what's called a zero deposit scheme, which is where tenants are able to pay the equivalent of 1 week's rental. And as long as they've passed all the relevant credit referencing checks, etc., as well, then the landlord, as long as they pay the 1 week rental, the landlord will still be covered for up to 6 weeks as well. And that is permitted under the Tenant Fees Act as well.
Right. Now, this is only residential, doesn't apply to commercial?
Just residential at the moment. It's only in England as well.
Yeah.
Wales, I believe, is coming in September 2019. Scotland already have this.
There's a few things that are still permitted, but the majority of the fees are gone, aren't they? There's no payments of anything for charging of guarantors, credit checks, inventories, cleaning services, that kind of stuff. There's lots of stuff.
It's, these are the banned fees, from that. So, a guarantor, it's astonished me that if someone's gone to rent and needs a guarantor, someone might charge them another £250 for that. It's ridiculous. I'm totally agreeing with the ban altogether. So I'm very pro the tenant fee ban on this. The credit checks, where people would have charged, typically in Birmingham, £150 to £250 per person on the tenancy. Not everybody, but that's a majority from the research I've carried out. No longer be allowed. Inventories, no longer be able to charge the tenants for the inventories, the cleaning services. The tenant can no longer be done the referencing, admin charges, for example. So the worry is will some of these from other letting agents, will they pass this on to the landlords, for example, to recoup their costs? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens now over the next few weeks. I think that a lot of agencies are going to look at it and think, well, nothing's going to happen, and they'll be able to get away with it.
I was going to say, is this going to cause an upturn in rentals? Because this is a positive move to remove hurdles to leasing.
Yeah, I think this is a very positive effect on rentals. You are still allowed. What you are allowed to do is take let me rephrase. The worry is a tenant, so John and Mary looking for an apartment, for example, in Birmingham City Centre, Jewry Quarter, Digbeth, and then would say, right, I've come and have a look. I really like this one. I want to go ahead with this one. But because I don't have to pay any fees anymore, then what I can do is go and look at another 4 or 5 and start my applications on all 4 or 5. And that's the worry, where the letting agents are worried that potentially you could you're doing all the checks, you're obviously incurring your costs for doing so, and then the tenants could say, I'm no longer interested, I've taken another one. Now, what you can do is take a holding deposit still to hold that property, but that is capped now at 1 week's rental.
Right.
And if and subject to the statutory legislation, the repayment of this tenancy not go ahead, then you should be refunding the client as well. You can't keep the money, and it must be repaid. There's a couple of conditions. So if you were renting a property today off me, then and you went, I want to get it secured, and the landlord said, I still want to see what else is out there. The landlord has 15 days to make a decision on whether to accept your application or not. If the tenancy then doesn't go ahead because the deadline is reached, or the landlord decides that he doesn't want to accept, or she doesn't want to accept your application, then that holding deposit of 1 week's rent maximum must be repaid in full within 7 days as well. If the tenancy does go ahead, then the holding deposit must be returned again within 7 days, unless it's converted as part payment of the actual deposit or the initial rent payment, for example. And repayment does not need to be made in full if the tenant backs out of the tenancy agreement themselves, fails the right to rent checks that must be taken out, or has provided obviously false or misleading information, or also where the landlord or the agent on behalf of the landlord tries their best to get the information needed, but the tenant fails to provide it within the 15 days as well. So actually, even though I know a lot of letting agents are really kicking up a bit of a fuss about this, saying, this is terrible.
It's kind of a futile thing, though.
I think it's a really good thing. Look,
No, it's futile of them to kick a fuss up, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and look, I think it's great. Tenants have always had a hard deal on this. As I say, we've always been against it. We've never charged tenant fees, so actually this doesn't affect us. at all. I think it's great now. There's a lot more clarity, and you have to look at it. Say you want your weekly rentals £200, for example. Well, look, you're going to pay you £200. The agent goes back to the landlord. They can do all their checks for you. As long as you're doing all your checks, you're going ahead. You're not withholding information. You're not lying about it. Etc. as well. The landlord's got 15 days. If he says, then yeah, I'm happy to take it, then that money goes towards the initial rent. You still got to pay a deposit, now 5 weeks, or an alternative like the zero deposit scheme, for example. If the landlord decides not to take it out, then that's their decision. So rightfully, in my opinion, the holding deposit has to be paid back to the tenant. And I don't think tenants are then going to go and pay, 5 times £200 on 5 properties. You pretty much know if you're going to go and buy a car, for example, you don't go and start 3 checks on 3 different dealerships to buy a car, do you? You narrow it down and then decide on which one that you want to go for, and it's going to be exactly the same here. And basically, it just means letting agents got to work a bit harder. Michael's asked, does this affect landlords who out their spare room your services like e.g. spare room? So this is where a grey area can kick in. But in essence, you are renting. You're renting a room. You're going to have an agreement. Obviously, just like you would in normal for renting out that room. So yes, in essence, you're allowed to be charged any tenancy. You will not be able to charge, obviously, the fees for that. And you've got to be very, very careful on this as well. So it's very serious. It's a big. This is a big part of it. They're coming in on it. People have got to get ready for this. As I say about the 5 weeks deposit, well, that's only anything up to £50,000 a year in rent. Anything over 50,000 is 6 weeks. But it's the start of every new tenancy now. All together. So, just to clarify, if there is damage, then breaches the tenancy agreement, you can still proceed. You can from that point to obviously try and get the money back. I think that's where you might be better off on a zero deposit scheme, for example, or you're making sure you're still taking that 5 weeks deposit for and registering it with TDS as well from this as well. But it's going to be interesting. What's interesting, the financial penalties. Don't forget, this is not just for agents. This is for landlords. So obviously, if you're renting out a spare room, a landlord, in essence, if you're renting out a spare room, all the tenant has to do is go to local trading standards, who will be required to enforce this. And they can issue a fine up to £5,000 for the first offence. Anything after that, £30,000.
Excellent.
Hope that answers your question.
Good. This weekend sees the relaunch of a new bar. It's Serve in Birmingham. And there's an exclusive party tomorrow night, which James and I have got tickets for. So we'll be there.
All right.
Yes.
What's this?
I don't think they're letting everyone in, so you'll have to. There was a limit on tickets, and I managed to score us a couple, so we are going to be able to go. But you can go as of Friday night as a regular. It's a ping pong establishment, so you can go in there, you can have a beer, and you can play a bit of table tennis. The table tennis is pretty cool because they've got buckets of balls there. So if you smash the ball and it goes over the opposite side of the bar, you just leave it. You pull another one out of the bucket and you carry on playing, and someone goes round with a little special tool that picks up all the ping pong balls and empties them back in for you. Rene is a guy who owns it, Rene Williams, and he's got a pile of events. He does a thing called Vintage Got Soul and some other stuff. He has live bands in there regularly on Friday and Saturday nights. So get yourself along to Serve. Have you ever been, mate?
I've never been there myself. It sounds very interesting, though, and obviously tomorrow I'm going to be experiencing it.
Yeah, it's got about 30 ping pong tables in there, and you just sit and play.
And whereabouts is it? I missed that. You mentioned that. Sorry, whereabouts is it?
It's on Bennett's, at the top of Bennett's Hill. I might have the wrong address here, but it's Temple Street, is it? Is it Temple Street?
It does look pretty cool, though, I have to admit here.
It is. It's excellent. It's a really well done bar. It's fitted out nicely. There's a lot of there's some private rooms as well where you can play table tennis and get bar service and that kind of thing. It's really well done. It's really well done. And It should be a good, fun night tomorrow night. We'll be there.
I'm looking forward to it as long as I am back in time.
We'll take a bit of video and we'll play it on next week's show, shall we? And have a quick interview with Rene.
Definitely. I think that's a great idea to do.
And we'll have a beer as well with him. We can. So if you haven't got an exclusive ticket, never mind. But you can go in on Friday night as normal. So there we go. Check out Serve. It's a fantastic place, just up at the top of Bennett's Hill, in the square there by the church, and it's lovely. Right. How many more family homes will we need, James?
We need loads. Latest projections are 2016, based on England, which estimated just shy of 4 million additional homes are needed between 2016 to 2041. That's a lot of homes.
It is.
In Wales, it's projected to be only 140,000 between 2014 and 2039. But I think what is more interesting about this, which I liked, is the one-person households is just changing dramatically. When you're looking at, I don't know if you've put that up there, and also where you've got your high migration of households with dependent children. It's just interesting for what's happening here. You just wonder, is the planning right? Or, I said it earlier, didn't I, in what we were discussing, we're just not building enough. And I think that's the simple case here, that we simply are just not building enough. And until we start to build more homes, we're going to get caught out quite quick. And, all this will then turn around and it will just have a real issue on the local facilities. But the biggest one is the households with dependent children are the most affected here by the varying projections. What they're saying in England, we need an extra 11,100 households with dependent children under the 10-year migration variant. Compare that to the main projection, as in the 5 years, an additional just under 308,000 households with dependent children are needed by 2041.
Well, drawing on my vast experience of playing Sim City here, mate, I know that if you're going to throw up dwellings, you need fire stations, you need police stations, you need doctors' surgeries, you need hospitals. You've got a lot of you can't just build houses because you've got infrastructure in the local area that needs to be enhanced as well as. So that bill is tenfold, surely.
Yeah, it's. I think, well, this is obviously what they're saying at the moment. You do wonder, do they downplay it? Are they looking at Brexit, possibly thinking numbers will change? But actually, I was at an event not too long ago, and one of the stats came out and said, well, actually, more people were employed last year, coming in from Europe as well than what they've seen before. So yes, we might have little blips here and there from that, but look. When you have to look at this, people still have children, people need to upgrade, it's all changing. And I think this is the difference where we've got to be very targeted in what we're doing. Typically in city centres, the average age is between 25 and 34. People are settling down, obviously concentrating on their work, getting into relationships. It's all about convenience on the doorsteps. But when you move into the suburban areas, we've got plenty of brown sites that could be developed, and they're not being developed quick enough. And we have to look at where's the hold-up, because there's plenty of property developers out there that would love to change these into housing developments. But then what we do see is then we see rejection from sometimes the local community because they don't want the houses on their doorstep anymore because they're worried about obviously the strain on the local infrastructure. But we've got to build them and they've got to go somewhere. So either we can go up or we have to get these sites under construction so we can start hitting the targets. And also let's look at it on another point. You can have families where they've started out as a couple, then they've had kids, and they need to move out. They need bigger properties now, and sometimes they just can't get it. And that's where it's all starting to bottleneck at certain places. And we need to start releasing the stock and releasing it fast to make sure that prices don't spiral out of control. We keep hearing about it all the time about the younger generation, how they're going to afford to get onto the market. Well, we have to look at various ways. Do we just build more homes and that brings the prices not down, but starts to give them a bit more of a level playing field? do mortgages need to be extended a lot more? Typically the 25, 30-year mortgage, well, should it be 40, 50 years now and spread across longer? We have to look at, I think, every different eventuality here, because something certainly needs to be done to improve it. It's no good if we keep looking at these and we keep talking about we're not building enough.
I've nearly finished my mortgage. I dread the thought of having another 25 years on top of it.
Yeah, it's just difficult, and it is upsetting. I think for any parent, if they're looking at their kids, if you work all your life, the difference is, of course, then you want to try and give a bit of a helping hand to your own child to get onto the property ladder. But also at the same point, you've worked all your life, you save money, you want to go and enjoy it when you're retiring. Also, so it's a bit of a catch. What we need to do, we're having some great infrastructure projects in the city centre. I think we need to go higher. I think city centres should have the high rise. I think it makes a lot more sense to have it in the city centres. That's where the power and the wealth and the sort of the money is, if you want to look at it. And as you move out to your suburban areas, you don't have the high rise. It's very low rise. It's more family orientated. Yes, you can still then have some low rise apartments as well and make them affordable, or some lovely 2-bedroom townhouses, or in that area. And if the designs are done well and the quality is correct, then people will buy them, because all they want is great property at the right quality and at the right price.
Excellent. This show is sponsored by Barrows and Forrester. The other half of the Barrows and Forrester is the bloke who's just finished talking about the last story, and they will sponsor this podcast. If you'd like to sponsor this podcast, then you can do that too. All you've got to do is send us an email to info@birminghampropertynews.co.uk, and you can join the throng. And if you'd like to promote your business as well, then come along. It's not a problem. If you're a Birmingham-based firm and you want to tell everyone about what you do, doesn't matter what it is, doesn't have to be to do with property, just come along and have an opinion on some of the stories, and you too can promote your stuff here if you'd like to. Where can people get a hold of Barrows and Forrester, James, and what do you do?
Very easy. So obviously we can help anybody here in the West Midlands on a sales, lettings and property management. Give the office a call on 0121 296 2600, or log on the website www.barrowsandforrester.co.uk.
Excellent. My name's Ewan Rankin. You can get me at Ewan Rankin on Twitter, or you can follow me at 12 Space Media on Instagram if you'd like to, or Twitter as well. We'll be back again next week, same time, 7 p.m. on Facebook, with a new Birmingham Property News show. Have a great week, and we'll see you then.